Hey folks, Fernando doing another video for the Modern Survivalist, and in this case I'm going to be explaining what's my favorite revolver. Before I start, let me welcome everyone new to the channel. Awesome to have you guys here. And this is a question I got in my Instagram. By the way, it's Furfile308 if you want to follow me there. Also subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed already, and the links for my books are also going to be there. So the answer to the question, what's my favorite revolver? It's this one. You've probably seen it already in some of my previous videos. It's the Manurran MR73 revolver, specifically the 5¼ inch barrel sport version, which is this beauty that I'm holding right here. And that's it. Bye-bye. No, yeah, that's just the start of the video. But yeah, this is my favorite revolver, and there's a good chance lots of you guys have not heard of it, have no clue whatsoever what a Manurran or man urine, which sounds like man urine, like man piss, which is not so nice. But what is this French revolver? These are made in France, or used to be made in France, and are still currently made by another company. But why is it that I hold it in such high regard? Well, for several reasons. Let's go back to the origin of what this revolver actually is, and I'll also explain why it's most likely something you've never heard before and why it's so obscure and so unknown even in many circles. Several reasons. First of all, this was a revolver specifically made for the GIGN. The GIGN was an anti-terrorist French group, Groupe d'Intervention de la Gendarmerie Nationale, of France, and it was specifically made as to respond to the terrorist threat across Europe. The ideology for the GIGN was very specific. They wanted to have an anti-terrorist tactical group that would preserve life. And the commander of the GIGN had this philosophy of, if we have to touch preserving life above everything else, and if we have to touch someone with a bullet, let it be just 1 or 2 shots. More than that, it's poor tactics and lack of training. That was his philosophy, which is very interesting. And I always get this idea of the MR73 being like Star Wars, the famous Star Wars Ben Kenobi quote, "It's an elegant weapon for a more civilized era." Man, yes, that's exactly what this revolver is, and I feel that it represents it quite nicely. So, a revolver that's powerful, just 6 shots, and you shouldn't need more than that if you're properly trained. Today, tactics are of course completely different, but back in the day, that was the idea for this commander and his specific group that was being created in a time, keep in mind, in a time where you already had high capacity 9mm auto pistols. It was specifically chosen to go this way with this philosophy, and it was honestly quite successful because the GIGN is still, till this day, one of the most highly regarded tactical units in the planet. It's always been very successful in its different deployments, and there's famous cases in which they actually have even shot to wound an attacker. In one case, an operative shot a terrorist or some guy with a gun in the shoulder, and when the guy tried to pick the gun with the other hand, he shot him in the other arm. So super accurate, very, very well trained, highly trained guys in all aspects of their skill, of their trade. They have to be fantastic shooters, you know, kind of like Olympic level kind of competitive shooters, very accurate people with their guns. They train a lot. They have to be great fighters hand to hand. They have to know, you know, ropes, rappelling, diving. It's a very complete set of skills. But above all of this, it's very skilled with the use of firearms, very accurate, and that means shooting a lot. How much? Well, about 150 rounds per day of 158 grains of full power Norma was what they were using back in the day. And one of the things they noticed was that the guns they had chosen, which were, I believe, Smith & Wesson revolvers, were just not keeping up to that. For those of you guys that just don't know this, a revolver is not like a semi-automatic pistol. A Glock can shoot hundreds of thousands of rounds, and like a high power, even like a 1911, you can shoot a lot through a pistol, and it's not gonna be deforming or breaking apart nearly as much as a revolver. With a revolver, it's a different story, especially when shooting some high power ammunition like 357 Magnum full power. So what they noticed was that with their Smith & Wessons, they used for a time they were using the Smith & Wesson's 19, which were very popular in the United States, but used mostly for training with 38 Special and just loaded for duty with 357 Magnum. That was not what they wanted. They wanted to train with the same ammunition they would be using in the field, so they were constantly using full power 357 Magnum, and the revolvers just couldn't take it. They tried Smith & Wesson, they tried Colt, and what they found out was the following. Like most revolvers, like pretty much all revolvers, even your nicer revolvers, these are not, and this was for a long time my favorite, my dream gun was a Python. For years as a kid, I always wanted to have a Python. And yeah, I love it, but it is no MR73. That's simply the way it is. A revolver is intended to take maybe 15, 20,000 rounds, 25, 30 at most, but past that, it's just not going to be making it because the frame starts stretching with those rounds. In a revolver like a Python, which is like a bulky, large revolver for the caliber, it may last even longer. Of course, changing small parts and such, like you always have to, but the frame of the revolver is likely to end up stretching, and you end up having to make either a bigger frame, and even then, it's still not going to be taking that kind of round count. And you need a new revolver. The GIGN did not want that. They wanted their revolver to last indefinitely. Basically, that was the idea. So what they did was order for the Minister of Defense to make the revolver to their own specific requirements. So what they wanted was pretty clear. They wanted a revolver very similar to their Smith & Wessons. They liked Smith & Wesson revolvers. They didn't like that it didn't take the amount of punishment that they were putting them through it. So they did upgraded premium version of a Smith & Wesson revolver, a little bit larger than a K frame, but made of ordnance tool steel specifically chosen for this task, which is a fantastic material. It's like a tool steel for you guys. It's very different from what you have in a typical revolver, which is made of a great material but easier to machine and work with. Tool steel is really not intended to be worked with in this manner because it's going to be a lot harder on the machining that you're using. It's going to be taking more time. It's a lot more difficult to make it of such hard tool steel tempered to this hardness. This is a gun that will last hundreds of thousands of rounds, which you will not find any other revolver except for the Korth being the most expensive revolver manufactured, the Manuran being very close to that as well. If you're going to be buying a new Manuran from Chapuis, which is the current company that owns the name and is making it, it's going to be 2,000 euros. So it's like $2,500 by the time it reaches, or even more with imports. So these are very expensive guns. Even more these that are the older ones actually made by Manuran back in the day, which have a little bit of a difference, and they honestly have more of a collector value as well. And some people say the quality of standard is not what it used to be. So these are very, very, very expensive firearms. So they wanted something that was pretty much bomb-proof and wouldn't die ever. They wanted this to be super accurate. It is crazy accurate. It wouldn't leave the factory if it didn't group under 20 millimeters at 25 meters. That's in a 2 centimeter hole at 25 meters. That's more accuracy than you would have in a Python or pretty much most other revolvers that you know of. Then there was, small details, like they would work like a special treatment on the chambers with salt so as to make it like glass smooth so that it would have perfect extraction every time. Same thing for a coal hammer, a forged hammered barrel with a treatment specifically of its own so as to make it super tough, super resistant. They would shoot overloaded cartridges, I think over 30% more than the full power 357 Magnum. The gun just didn't break even with that, and even after hundreds of thousands of rounds, I think that they tested it up to 70,000 rounds in some cases, they didn't find any loss of accuracy or any problems with the gun after that round count, which is crazy. It's unbelievable. Now, in the case of how the gun works, very similar to a Smith internally, but it has a few improvements. It has like a ball bearing type of mechanism on the inside, so it's literally super smooth. It has like a couple wheels where it's rotating on the inside, and it's a very short double action. It was intended specifically as a combat, as a tactical revolver, which is something you just don't hear of. You find semi-automatic pistols made specifically for different contracts, but having a small tactical unit request their dream gun being made, which is the MR73, you just don't hear of a whole lot. So the Ministry of Defense of France had Manuran, which was already making some firearms, make the MR73 specifically for the GIGN. The action is already also super smooth, but also very short. So it's very stiff a little bit. At least I have it adjusted in a way that is very stiff, but very short. So I have like a very nice, it almost feels like very similar to my Glock in many ways. I can go from my Glock to my MR73 and not have much of a loss of how I use my finger on it. The trigger pull, it's very similar because it is one of the shortest double action trigger pulls that you have in any revolver. And you can adjust it whatever way you want. So if you want it super smooth, you have a screw here. You have a couple screws that allow you to adjust independently the tension spring on the hammer and the tension on the double action trigger. So you can have this adjusted all the way down and it will not even work as a double action trigger. It will only be a single action. It will just stay almost there right and back. So it's a gun that you have to know how to use. You have to know what you're dealing with. When I first got one of these, it was the screw was set up in such a way that it had almost no return, which was kind of annoying if you want to shoot in faster double action. So is the gun broken? That's what someone that's not used to these sort of firearms would think. No, it's not broken or anything. It just needs to be adjusted specifically to your desire. And you have a screw there that works as a stop, so as to have no dead movement there. Fantastic. It's a beautiful gun. So it's tough as nail. It's super accurate. These are being used currently as target shooting revolvers. So as tough as they are, a double action made specifically for combat with a fantastic angle in which the hammer drops. These were so accurate. There's a sniper version of this revolver, which is, I think it's like an 8-inch barrel with a bipod. So you would probably use it in double action, in single action only, right? You would have it in single action and just strap on it, and it worked like an urban sniper firearm, which is crazy, but these guys would use it like that. Besides all of that, I'm just looking at it right now. It's a super elegant, fine looking gun. It just looks beautiful with that deep blue, almost black, and that straw color hammer and trigger. It just does it for me. The oak, what is this? Like, yeah, just, and the little emblem there, golding as well, just works with a very fine French taste of firearms, I would say. It just works beautifully well. Other than that, just fantastic. It has, the quality of construction is amazing. You've probably seen some of these, if you know of the brand in US, that those were surplus revolvers, nothing like this. Those were used first by the French gendarme or police or whoever it was in France. Then they were sent over to Cobra, another anti-terrorist tactical group in Austria, and then those ended up in somewhere in Africa, in some African country, and only then were they surplus to the US market. And even those guns are worth like $600-700 back in the day when you could first find them, and they have round counts well over 100,000 rounds. Those guns are shot a lot. Still fantastic firearms, but not in this condition, not at all. This is the sport version. This is the gendarme, I believe, and you find a couple small differences. It's a smaller rear side, so this will be a little bit less likely to snag, and you don't, the front side also probably so as to not snag as much. This is the sport version intended for target shooting. When they started manufacturing these guns for the GIGN, they also realized, hey, we have a market here for any French target shooter that wants a crazy accurate gun, we can sell it to those guys. So they started manufacturing these for the civilian market as well. But you have a revolver that is super expensive, made in France, and it didn't appeal a lot, I guess, to the US market. For the US, you would want like a fine gun. It would be a Colt, it would be a Smith & Wesson, that kind of thing. You want a tough gun, you get a Ruger. But I suppose that 90% of the shooters in the United States, you go like, hey, I have this French $2,000 gun. Most of them would have gone, yeah, not interested. What, made by French? Whether they know about making guns, right? So that would have been one of the typical reactions. It was not marketed so as to sell to anyone other than, first of all, GIGN, and then whoever in the local civilian market was interested, and nothing in terms of let's make this global, let's sell it all over the world, let's go to the United States and sell man rounds all over the place. It just was not the market intended for that. Why buy a gun so expensive when you have other choices? And people, you really don't shoot all that much. Most people will never realize that a revolver cannot take 30,000 rounds. And even like a Jerry McCulloch type of guy, he's going to be having loads of different revolvers to go through. He's going to be changing revolvers, having as many revolvers as he could possibly have. He's not going to be sticking his entire life to just one revolver. So there just was not a market for this kind of thing. Today, collectors are a little bit more aware, and there's this market for it. And if you look in Gunbroker, they're going for like $3,000, give or take. Not cheap at all, super expensive. But it is a fantastic firearm, and it is definitely my favorite revolver. That's why I got two, and this is the one that I keep like my safe queen, using it every once in a while. And this is the one that I have. This is my MR73 user, I guess, which is still beautiful, man. It's just a beauty of a gun, fantastic shooter as well. You wouldn't believe how accurate these things are when you take your time, and even shooting in fast double action, you just get very nice groups. I have the rubber grips for it, but I like the wooden ones better. Just feel your hand more. And I now understand why I see so many of the GIGN guys that still use it. Every once in a while you see some pictures, and most of those will have the wooden grips. GIGN, I actually talked with a company now that's manufacturing these, the Chapuis in France, and they're not using it. They're not issuing these to the GIGN anymore. They can still use it because it's available in their arsenals, and if some officer in GIGN feels he needs a revolver for his specific mission, they have the flexibility of using whatever they want, so they may pick it. But usually what the GIGN uses as their sidearm is a Glock 17. But every once in a while, if they feel it's needed, they have the flexibility so as to use it again. But it was just a few years ago that I saw maybe a picture floating around of an officer, a GIGN officer with a vest, a revolver, and a Glock there on the side. But it's going to the way of collector's market and the legend of the thing, rather than something that's practical being used at the moment. But man, I do love them, and they're fantastic revolvers. Probably the best revolver ever made. Folks, have an awesome day. See you on our next video. Take care.